Tank.
Sometimes
My wife and I've been binge watching Shark Tank. The stuff that people come up with, I mean, it's like some of them are just ridiculous. But
I think it's kind of like American Idol, where they let those ridiculous people on
because it's entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, it's half the fun is watching people's preposterous ideas.
That's true. One guy the other night, he had a little this little chip thing you put over the computer, the camera. So that the NSA or whoever can't watch you.
Oh, they're watching.
And he's like, okay, so here's the thing. I'm going to sell it for $9.95, and if we get 1% of the market, blah blah blah. We're all going to be billionaires. And then one of the sharks said, "What? I can just put a piece of tape over there. I think I saw Mark Zuckerberg put a piece of duct tape on his over the camera." Oh,
yeah.
Somebody else said it'd be fun if you had a little thing you put over it and there was an image on the inside that was like this, something.
Can you imagine the type of person that would have to be sitting around all day waiting for you to turn your laptop camera on? Come on, let me see what you're doing. Come on.
They must have algorithms that just look and scan and try to find it. I don't know.
I could only imagine. What's up?
That stuff that came out over the weekend that I was trying to tell you about that Snowden was retweeting.
Just by the sound of your...
The NSA knows who you are just by the sound of your voice, and their tech predates Apple and Amazon. A report on The Intercept citing documents leaked by former NSA contractor Edward Snowden revealed that the NSA has highly refined voice recognition software. The agency's technology dates back to more than a decade and was instrumental in helping to identify Saddam Hussein after the invasion of Iraq, the report stated.
Your voice where? Just in the room with your laptop, or you mean on the phone?
Supposedly, they can use almost any microphone that's connected to the internet.
Okay.
Obviously,
so
there's
every
speakers
laptop
that are available. Yeah, and your voice, the recognition they have is better than a face print or a fingerprint.
Yeah.
So if they wanted to find young Jamie, they could get you from your laptop.
Already have it.
Wow.
That's what this is saying. Or you have had it and don't worry about it. Like, there's almost nothing you can do to
What is your thoughts on Snowden and all that?
And then who's the other guy? Assange.
No,
Assange. Julian Assange. I have a bad feeling about Julian Assange. I have a good feeling about Snowden.
Do you have everybody had a good feeling about Assange until Trump got into office.
No, the stuff before that, I didn't care for him. But I saw Snowden made an appearance sort of at TED, the last TED I went to in Vancouver, and they rolled him out on a computer, big screen, and there he was in Russia somewhere.
Right.
But the points he made were similar to that of Daniel Ellsberg and the Pentagon Papers. It's like, we should know what our government's doing. We don't have to know everything. We don't have to share the nuclear codes with you and I. But at some point, there's some line there of how much freedom versus security, and there's just too much stuff going on. Even in the Obama administration, the administration of transparency, this is when a lot of this stuff was happening. It's like, wait a minute, I thought it was Bush that was doing this kind of stuff. But
we have to remember that Edward Snowden went into hiding during the Obama administration. They're one of the worst administrations ever on record for whistleblowers.
Right.
Which is really crazy, because if you go look at the Hope and Change website when it initially existed, one of the big promises was protection for whistleblowers that are exposing illegal activity.
Right.
And that's just not true.
Yep. I think he should be allowed to come back.
Yes.
He doesn't have to be worshipped as a hero. It's just like he's
a brave person.
Before him, we weren't talking about any of this stuff. We didn't know about this stuff.
Well, there was an NSA contractor from many years ago who brought this stuff up, and he was sort of dismissed. What is his name? He was the original NSA contractor that brought this up, I want to say in 2011. Boy, I can see him in my mind. I can't remember his name.
Bill Binney.
That's it. Bill Binney.
I'm not sure who that is.
Yeah, pull that guy up, young Jamie.
I just read...
he was the original guy. Bill Binney, the original NSA whistleblower on Snowden, 9/11, and illegal surveillance. He became incredibly concerned post 9/11 when they started doing a lot of this, the initial work on computer surveillance and all the stuff that they were doing, and he bailed.
Interesting.
And he started talking about it openly and publicly. And then Snowden came out after that, and the Snowden thing was where people got all exposed. Like, we really got a chance to understand, this is actually happening right now. This is a real thing.
Right. Yeah, I do think the government does overreach with their security theater. We're at orange level today.
Remember that?
Unbelievable.
That doesn't happen anymore.
And yet,
what happened to that?
And yet the number of Americans that die from foreign terrorism, I mean, there's some of the domestic terrorists, if you want to consider mass public shootings in that category, but foreign terrorists coming here to kill Americans, I mean, what is it? It's less than bathtub drownings, or no, way less than that, like double lightning strikes or something. I mean, it's just nothing.
It's like shark attacks.
Yeah, you're right. It's just, why are we spending, billions and billions of dollars on this? It's, because
to keep it that way.
Because they could.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like the proverbial elephant repellent. Ever since we put the repellent here, not a single elephant has come in. Oh yeah. Okay.
Well, Michael Sherman, we're Americans. We don't want to get caught with our pants down.
Yeah, I understand, and it's. I just read Daniel Ellsberg's new book, The Doomsday Machine. This is on nuclear deterrence. He's against He thinks nuclear deterrence as a rational strategy is a long-term mistake because of the possibilities of error.
Yeah.
Which, it's all good points, but he has, I'm not sure why he took so long to bring this book out. He's got his notes when he worked for the State Department in the 50s and then the Rand Corporation in the early 60s during the Kennedy administration of the kinds of calculations our own government was making about how many people we were willing to kill in defense, hundreds of millions of Russians. Just, it's just like, it's like the scene from Dr. Strangelove where George C. Scott, he's like, I'm not saying we wouldn't get our hair mussed, but 20, 30 million tops. It's like, and that's actually real. That's the kind of numbers they were throwing out.
Yeah, you can't leave a human being with that much responsibility and power.
No.
And I think that's the bottom line when it comes to this NSA surveillance thing is that all these government agencies are populated by human beings.
Right.
And human beings should not have that kind of power over other human beings that are just citizens.
Right.
Because they're just, the ability to check Snowden talked about people being able to check in on their exes and read their emails, and they were doing things like that. And this is when Obama was like, no, this is just metadata.
Right.
No, it wasn't just metadata, man. They were looking at everything.
Right.
And that's something we should know about, and we didn't until Snowden. And now this poor guy has to live in Russia.
Yep. No, I think he should be brought back for sure.
But could he be? He would have to do something awesome for Trump.
Yeah, well, it might be after Trump. I don't know.
Maybe he.
It's disturbing that of all people, it's Putin who's protecting him. It's
Isn't
like,
it crazy?
Wait a minute, what?
I know. It's weird. Well, he's probably helping Putin.
But when he makes, if you watch the TED Talk interview, Chris Anderson was just talking to him on stage from an undisclosed location in Russia. He can't come off totally reasonable. Like,
yes.
This is what democracy, here's a democracy, this is what we live in. Citizens need to know some things, not everything. He came off totally rational.
He did a great podcast with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he came off very rational there as well.
Oh, I didn't know Neil interviewed him.
Yeah, Neil interviewed him. And look, we don't agree to that kind of surveillance. That's very Orwellian. It's not what we want. And this is not, you're not stopping terrorism.
No.
You're just spying on people.
Right.
And also people are rightly concerned that anything that they find could be used against you if you are a political opponent of theirs, or if there's something that you're trying to oppose.
Right.
And they go, hey, well, we found out that you're into like cuckold porn, buddy.
Right.
Or whatever it is. It's just, there's too much.
The kind of stuff Nixon did with the Hoover, J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI.
Well, I think Hoover did it on his own, right? He did it pre-Nixon.
Right. Yeah.
Hoover was a fascinating character.
Yeah.
Cross-dresser, out of his mind, total freak, and just like spying on everybody.
Right.
Just to try to hide his own secrets.
Yeah.
Really amazing. Right?
Yeah. But there's an example of one person, a flawed human like everyone else, given all this power. And imagine what Hoover would do today with the internet. I mean, he'd be taking this to an extreme.
Well, arguably more flawed than normal human beings.
Yeah.
And I think that goes back to the thing that you were talking about with these cult leaders. It's like humans should not have power over other humans.
Right.
And when they do terrible things.
Right.
And they abuse that power, and they I mean, it's the responsibility that one would have to be able to do that George C. Scott thing and say, 20 million, 30 million, no big deal. We'll lose a few people in Chicago.
Right.
I mean, that's a crazy thing for a human being to have at their fingertips.
Yep. And the other problem is bureaucracy. Any large organization, but especially bureaucracies, their tendency is to keep alive. We got to keep our jobs.
Yeah.
And it's, the moment you set up a government agency, it's really difficult to shut it off.
Yeah, almost impossible.
Yeah. Because you have real people with jobs and mortgages and families, and I got to keep my job. So we have to justify why we need our department and so on, and it just always builds that way.
That is the big issue with big government, is it just grows bigger. It never shrinks. They never say, oh, you know what? We don't need the IRS.
Right.
This is nonsense. We realize that if we don't have the IRS, we have to pay so many less people that we can actually get less money in taxes from folks.
Right. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just a huge problem. I don't have a good solution to it.
Well, it brings me back to the last word of the title of your book, The Scientific Search for the Afterlife, Immortality, and Utopia.
Yeah, utopia, yes.
Utopia is what we're always looking for, right?
Yeah, totally. And it doesn't exist. It can't ever exist, not even in principle, because there is no right society. Because we have so much variation in our interests and needs and wants and abilities. And, the idea of programming by fiat from the top down, this is what we're going to do and it's going to work, or else you're out.
Yeah.
And this is the problem with utilitarianism, is get you that utilitarian calculus of the greatest good for the greatest number. And we know what that is, and you are standing in our way. You are preventing utopia, so we are going to eliminate you. This is the famous trolley experiment, thought experiment. The trolley's hurtling down the tracks about to kill the 5 workers. You're at the switch. If you throw the switch, it'll go down a side track. It'll kill 1 worker. Would you throw the switch? Kill the 1 to save the 5. The 5 are going to die if you don't do anything, so would you throw the switch? So most people say they would. That you can go on the website and do this yourself.
Depends on who's on which side.
It depends on which track, It
really does. Right?
It's Rush Limbaugh on this one track.
Can you imagine? And 5 school kids.
Yeah, 5 school kids.
With massive potential for the future.
But now most people say they would flip the switch, but an interesting twist on that. So if you're standing on a bridge over the track and the train is hurtling down the tracks about to kill the 5 workers, and standing next to you is a great big guy, would you hip check him off? Boom, he lands on the track, splat, he's killed by the train, but it stops it and saves the 5 workers. Now most people say, I got to physically grab him and throw him off? Yeah, no, I couldn't do that. So it's something to do with, it engages the emotional part of the brain, that actively killing somebody is way harder than passively killing. So if you only have to if you're at a B-52 bomber 35,000 feet up, and you only have to press the button to release the bombs, not so hard.
But that's even more actively doing it than a drone. The drone one apparently is a giant issue for the drone pilots. Apparently they suffer from really weird PTSD.
Really?
Yeah.
Even though they're in Arizona doing it in Iraq or whatever.
Yeah, the nightmares, they're pretty intense.
Interesting. I had not heard that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at a screen and you're seeing someone on the other side of the planet, you're in Nevada,
right,
in some military base,
right,
and you're hitting that button and you're watching the screen, you're seeing some, infrared or black night vision of missiles slamming into the person that you were just observing.
There was a good movie about that was like the trolley problem. It was maybe 2 years ago, where the decision is to be made. Well, the setup is, we know that the terrorists are making a bomb inside this building, and we can get a drone there to hit it. And so they're about to do this. This is toward the beginning. They're about to do this, and this little girl walks into the scene, and she's selling bread. I think it's in Afghanistan or Iraq. So she's on the corner, so she will be killed. And it's like, okay, maybe we could come around from the other side, and then she won't be. And they're doing all these calculations, but now there's some other people over here. So how many people, innocents, should we kill? Because we know that the terrorists are going to, if they complete their suicide bomb, they're going to go to a mall and kill 300 people or whatever.
Right.
So they show those, how these government agencies think about those calculations. We got to stop the bad guys, but how many good people are we willing to kill to prevent them from killing even more? We think maybe if they do this, and then it gets murky from there.
Well, Mike Baker, who's a former bigwig at the CIA, I've talked to him several times on the podcast. One of the things that he said is that's done by lawyers.
Right, that's right, legal. That's right, because there's legal precedence about collateral damage that came from the Nuremberg laws, and there's some questionable stuff we were doing. I mean, I think it's justified in the Second World War, but the mass bombing of Hamburg and Dresden, this didn't slow the Nazi war machine at all. But the idea was that, well, the citizens will rise up and kill Hitler. No, you can't in that kind of society. You just don't have that kind of access or power.
Yeah.
And this was like when in the first Iraq War. Well, we'll stop short. Bush Sr. said we're going to stop short and let Saddam's own people take him out and have their own regime change, and then we'll support the new regime. And it just didn't work out that way. No. So there, the calculations get messy. I got kind of sidetracked. The problem with utopian idea is that utilitarian calculus. If most people will agree that it's okay to kill 1 to save 5, why not kill 1 million to save 5 million? That's genocide. And that is the calculations that genocidal mass murderers make. Our German society would be great, except for those Jews. The backstabbers who ruined us in the First World War. Now we can just get rid of them. It's going to be great. And every genocide is based on that kind of utilitarian calculus, however emotional driven it is.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you look at the numbers from drone attacks. It's some high 80, 90% of innocent people that are killed.
Right.
The casualties, when you look at it in terms of like what the actual targets that we're looking for versus the actual people that were killed with collateral damage, there's a tremendous amount of collateral damage. And that's not something that we would ever accept from one guy.
Right.
Say if we had one guy with a howitzer and he just went in there and he's just blasting women and children to get to the guy that's in the top of the building.
Right.
There'd be no fucking way.
No.
It'd be like, that guy's a murderer. He's a monster.
Right.
But if one guy in Nevada presses a button and some Hellfire missiles come shooting out of a flying robot and they slam into that building and kill everybody, including this one terrorist that we were after, we accept it.
Right. So in game theory, there's this problem of this sort of sliding scale that, okay, I know it's like the Milgram shock experiment of 15 volts at a time. Before you know it, you're throwing 450 volts into this subject. You couldn't get somebody to do that initially, but if you do it incrementally, they're kind of hoping, well, if I hold out and just do one more, maybe the experiment will end. And it's like this with these kind of utilitarian calculus. Okay, I know I probably shouldn't be doing this, with these collateral damage but if we keep going, we'll end the war, and then that'll stop the other kind of killing we do want to stop. But it's always so messy that it takes much longer than you think. So you can kind of see the logic. Like, okay, I don't know if you watch Ken Burns' documentary series on the Vietnam War, but it kind of felt like that the whole time. Like, this is when you see at the end, it's like, God, this was a catastrophe.
Yeah.
But at every step, Kennedy, then Johnson, then Nixon, it's like, okay, we can't give up now. The sunk cost fallacy. We put all this in there, just one more month.
Right.
And then we'll get out. And then the month comes, like, okay, it's not going quite. Another month, another year, and then before you know it, you got 58,000 dead. And it's like, okay, this just didn't work. And I think that happens more often because it's always messier.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, war in itself is an incredibly messy business.
Do you know it's outlawed? It was outlawed in the Paris Peace Agreements of 1927. War is illegal. It's a great book called The Internationalists. It gives the history of how this came about. And the reason for it, so they give the whole history going all the way back to when war became legal, and it goes all the way back to this Spanish and Dutch conflict they were having, and I forget who did what, but a Spanish ship confiscated a Dutch ship and took all its stuff, and then there was a legal battle about this, and whichever side, I think it was the Spanish, said, no, actually, we're at war, and if you're at war, it's okay to be a pirate and kill people and stuff like that. And so this Hugo Grotius, legal scholar, wrote all this treatise that got laid down that said this is when war is legal. It's perfectly okay to kill other people and take their stuff if you're at war. So what does that mean to be at war? So then it's all done by lawyers. Like, okay, this is what it is, and we have lived with that ever since. So in the 1927 Paris Peace Agreement, said, okay, we're going to stop that. War is illegal now. Obviously, this didn't stop Hitler and Imperial Japan and so on, but at least now leaders have to justify. It's like Bush had to go to the UN and get his coalition of the willing, and that's when Colin Powell had to say, oh yes, we know about the yellow cake and that Saddam Hussein wants nuclear weapons. I mean, why would anybody bother with all that stuff? In the old days, they just invade.
Right.
I came, I saw, I conquered it. Took my stuff. And now you have to say, I came, I saw, I was just standing there minding my own business, and he punched me, so I invaded him. You at least have to do that now.
It's sort of like what we were talking about earlier, that the world today, I mean, they're consciously recognizing that there are more rules and that society is a much more complex and safer place to be, and they want to protect that progress in some way.
That's right.
And that's what the rules of war in comparison to 2,000 years ago.
Right. Yeah. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, ultimately.
I mean, it doesn't stop everybody, but even Kim Jong-un, I kind of have a feeling, and maybe I'm naive, that it's just deterrence for him. He wants a place at the table where he's respected. His country is not going to be invaded. And this is sort of a Noam Chomsky argument that I don't usually make. But if you look at how America treats other countries, if they have nukes, we leave them alone. If they don't, we do whatever we kind of feel like.
Right.
So from his perspective, it could be those Americans, because you see they make arguments like this. These Americans are evil. Why? Look, they invaded this country. They invaded that. They've been in a dozen wars, and just never ending. This is who they are. We're going to get nukes, and they're not going to fuck with this ever again. And maybe he'll just stop and go, that's it. Okay, you leave me alone. I'll leave you alone.
I don't agree with Noam Chomsky on everything, but I'm very happy there's someone like him out there who's a brilliant guy that's as far left as you can get.
Yeah.
He's way out there. I think it's important to balance these intellectual disagreements. And, you need a super smart far lefty guy wearing a sweater who talks like this and very slow.
Back up. You're not in my thoughts at all.